Yo, what's good, guys? We are back at it again with another MLB The Show video for you guys, and today I'm going to be going over all of the infielders I think you should be running at the end of Season 2. We have about 2 weeks and some change left in this season, so I want to get the infielders and outfielders out ASAP for you guys, and then we'll do pitchers, but obviously that's more difficulty dependent than like infielders. So do want to apologize for the lack of uploads. It's been about 2 weeks without an upload. Have been very sick, but we are on the road to recovery now and doing a lot better. So feel free to like and subscribe, and we're gonna be doing this rest of the year. So let's hop into it. Adam Dunn, if you're using Adam Dunn, we all know why. It's because you really like the captain card, you really like his swing, the quirks that he has, that power hitter archetype at first base. Obviously significantly better as a first baseman slash like a DH than a pure outfielder, but a very good option at first base. There's a lot of just kind of A-tier first basemen that I clumped together. I didn't pull any punches with this list. If I looked at a card and was like, no, there's no way, like there's no reason you would want to run them other than just liking the card, I didn't put them on the list. This is pulled no punches, cut and dry, what I think are the best cards. Beltre, statistically, he's up there, more of a contact guy, so probably going to do better on like Hall of Fame legend. I'm not the biggest fan of his swing, but a lot of people are. I'm sure he has some good quirks being a legend. You can see first pitch, dead red, breaking ball. Pretty good. He has the best two quirks in the game, and maybe even the third best quirk in the game right there. With exceptional contact, very good fielding, and he's kind of fast relative to being a third baseman. So he's a really good option. If we didn't have the program bosses that we had, he'd probably be higher. Santander, probably C at this point. He is a switch hitter, so that's kind of why you would want to use him. Statistically, he's one of your better options at being a switch hitter at first base. But that being said, his contacts have kind of fallen behind. So if you're an all-star player, this dude is all you need at first base. You'll be hard-pressed to find a better first baseman. But for anybody that's on Hall of Fame or on Legend, this card's going to kind of sink into obscurity. You're going to have this card super fractured, and you're going to have to be very comfortable with this swing. Bambino, enough said. Statistically perfect. Is a lefty, but has a really good swing. So, S tier, he's going to be a top 5 card probably for the whole year. Buck Leonard, more in that kind of Freddie Freeman slash Buck O'Neill type of archetype for a first baseman. More kind of contact focused. They did give him good power. But he's one of those first basemen that has good defense, that's kind of fast. So if you prefer a first baseman like that, he might be the cream of the crop in that regard, but not my favorite archetype for first baseman. Delgado's just kind of a worse version of that, where he has really high contacts. I think his power against lefties is really bad. He looks like Kanye West. He has a cool bat flip, so that's maybe why you would want to use him. But I think his swing's decent enough, and the contact's a good enough argument for me as to why you might want to use him. Chipper, this is who I was alluding to with Beltre, where if Chipper wasn't in the game, Beltre probably be everybody's third baseman. But it's Chipper Jones season, so he's going to be in everybody's lineup probably for the rest of the year. He has arrived, and you could make the argument that he's a better card than Babe Ruth. Jeter, probably A. The power is just a really big turnoff with this card. I think he has 82 power. Yeah, so 82 power right, which is honestly the matchup you're going to see the most with him being a righty. People are going to bring in righties out the pin to face him. They're not going to bring in lefties, especially with this power split. But contact-wise, perfect. Clutch-wise, perfect. He has a good enough swing. It's not my favorite swing. A lot of people do enjoy it. And statistically, he's a good fielder. He's kind of a fraud for me in the past, where he's not the craziest fielder. Like Ellie De La Cruz All-Star game card is going to play better defense just because that's how the game works. But he's a decent enough option. If you want to run the captain, you can run the captain. Ernie, new best shortstop in the game, up there with Babe. He's going to be perennial top 5 conversations. Not necessarily my favorite swing in the world, but it's good enough to where you can really work with it. We've had leaks of like Randy Johnson coming next season. If next season is another lefty heavy meta, this Ernie Banks card is going to feed families. I'd definitely go get him. He's not that difficult. Just got to knock out team affinity and probably buy a couple cards. That won't be too much. But absolute stud. Ernie's always a stud. I'm not sure what his quirks look like because this is his first like meta card this year. First pitch, dead red, breaking ball. Like I said, with Beltre, those are probably the best 3 quirks in the game. He's an absolute stud. The only way he gets better really is being a switch hitter or being a little bit faster. Salas kind of falls in that like B tier, A tier, however you want to frame it, of catchers, where he's not the best option. He can be your like 2A, 2B option, but he's never going to be the best catcher in the game. Eugenio, if you've never used an Eugenio card, I would very much so urge you to go try out this one. Statistically, he's kind of in that mold of a home run derby card. I believe he's in the Moonshot program, so it kind of makes sense. Lower contacts, very high power, but his swing is so butter. Legitimately has one of the better swings in the game every single year, and always kind of gets looked over because he doesn't usually get the best cards. Plus, he's not a huge name. Eugenio Suarez, absolute dog. Tatis kind of falling behind. Can't, in all good consciousness, put him that much worse than Jeter. His power is a little better than Jeter. It's still not great. 83, 109. So he kind of has inverse splits from Jeter. The contact's lower, the clutch is lower. He's not as fast. He's probably not going to be quite as good of a fielder because he's a primary outfielder. So he's kind of like budget Jeter. If you really enjoy Tatis's swing, maybe you can make the argument he's on par with Jeter. But for me, I think Jeter's got the better swing, the better contact, the better clutch, the better fielding, and the power almost cancels out. So Lindor, S tier. S tier, but with an asterisk. He is not the S tier shortstop, in my opinion. That's easily Ernie Banks. But at second base, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a better card than this. I tried this card at shortstop in events, and he sucks. He's not a very good fielder. He has very low arm strength, so especially at this point in the season where there's a lot of degenerates running around with 99 speed teams, he's going to give up some infield singles. He doesn't always get the best animations. He's kind of short, but on offense, he's close to perfect. He has really good power numbers, especially against lefties. Has one of the better swings every single year. He's a switch hitter, and he is a diamond fielder at second base. Like, he's not just going to fumble balls. So, you know, as a second baseman, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a better one. Flank Thomas right here, flanked by the boss. Probably A tier. I don't think I can put him on the same tier as Babe Ruth. In theory, he is kind of a right-handed Babe Ruth, but we're not exactly in a meta where if we were in the meta earlier in the year where it was Randy and John, every single game you loaded up online and maybe you find a Pettit sprinkled in between those, he would be S tier. But we're not really in that meta, and Frank's kind of always somebody that struggles righty-righty. If he's facing somebody with an outlier sinker or an outlier four seam, he tends to get jammed a lot. If you have somebody that throws hard sliders, he's probably going to get jammed a lot. It's just kind of the nature of his swing. I believe he's usually like an opposite fielded hitter, typically gets jammed a lot, very reminiscent of kind of like Willie Mays. So fair warning, but he does absolutely mash lefties. The Sanchez, up there for one of the better catchers. Statistically, you just can't really put him in that upper echelon because the contacts aren't really there. But if you just want a power archetype catcher with a phenomenal swing, he's a stud. 100, 105, a little bit low. All-Star, you're probably good with that. Hall of Fame, you're probably good with that. Legend starts to get a little sketchy depending on who the starting pitcher is, but definitely still a usable card on Legend. 125, 125. 103 clutch, so again a little lower than you want. And then fielding wise, it's Gary Sanchez. What do you really expect? But really you're using him for the swing and the power. Use him in events. He uppercuts everything. The amount of home runs he hits where you're not even touching the ball is ridiculous. We have been known for years that those power hitter archetype players are kind of glitchy like that, and Gary's kind of no exception. Jackson Holiday, again, kind of blends in with the Jeter tier. He's almost like a left-handed Jeter. I think he's a little bit slower, not quite the fielder, has slightly better power, but slightly worse contact, if I'm not too far mistaken with that. I really enjoyed his card at the very start of the year. He was an absolute stud then, and I think he's fully capable of still being that stud. It's just he's not kind of the de facto option at short anymore. The Burger Man. In a perfect world, I think probably A tier. He's got the Gary argument where on All-Star, this is all you need. On Hall of Fame, he's very good. And then on Legend, might struggle a little bit. In a perfect world where you can make sure there's always runners on base for him, Oh my, this card would be insane. Has a really good swing. It's just the contacts are a little bit low. They're more around that like 100 line. But the clutch is better, right? It's not like Gary. He has higher clutch, so it kind of makes up for it in certain situations where he's a very good option at third. I don't know if he can play second or not. He can, so it's second. Maybe if you're not looking for that Lindor archetype, if you're looking for more of that like Brandon Lau archetype, he can fill that role for you. Jim Thome just kind of blends in with a lot of these other first basemen where it's like, bleh, you know, take your pick. Him and Adam Dunn, basically same player. Joe Mauer is up there. He's up there. The power is a little bit low, but especially on those higher difficulties, you're going to be hard pressed to find a better catcher. 125, 125, 86, 95, maxed out clutch. It's Joe Mauer, so obviously the fielding's going to be ridiculous, although he doesn't have catcher pop time, which is interesting. But if you use that BR reward Mauer at the very start of the year, you know this card has glitchy pop. He plays like he has more power than he actually does. Has a great swing. The contact vision will help you get more perfect, so it kind of offsets the power gap a little bit. Probably my pick for the best catcher, assuming that you don't wild card one, which is probably what you should be doing. This Votto, very good statistically, very similar to like a Babe Ruth, honestly. Might even have a better swing. It just kind of depends on how you feel about the high early leg kick that Votto always has, but max contact, very good power. It's a little low against lefties, but with the quirk, I guess he only has Rally Monkey. That's crazy. 125 clutch, decent enough fielding, is very slow. Would I still prefer Babe over him? Yeah, probably. But I could see an argument to be made for using Votto, or even using both of them and just DHing Babe and using Votto at first. John Kruk, not really a guy I see any argument in. Honestly, I might could take him off the list, but I think it's a cool name to include, so I'll keep him on. Just not the best. He has really good contact, kind of subpar power, especially for a first baseman at first. You really want your first baseman to have that like power stroke. You want them to be one of your leading home run hitters on your team, and John Kruk just doesn't really do that. The only situation I could see is if somehow you're knocking on the door to legend and you're not super comfortable with the PCI sizes there, and he's the only first baseman you could get, then maybe, but I don't see anybody in that exact situation, especially with how the market is. Johnny Bench goes in with Salas. He's fine. He's usable. I don't personally usually like his swing. I don't think his quirks are too crazy. So they're pretty good. Dead red, breaking ball, unfazed. They're decent enough, but I don't think it offsets his swing being mid and his stats just kind of being mid. Jose Ramirez, as much as I want to put him S tier, I think he's just A. Very similar argument to kind of like Santander, where if you are on All-Star, this is a God card. If you're on Hall of Fame, you know, you got arguments with them. And if you're on Legend, you're probably not using this card. But I would argue that Jose Ramirez has the best swing in the game, and you can use him on Legend if you really want to, especially being a switch hitter. You probably put him at second base or DH. I feel like third base is kind of a congested position right now, but he can hold it down, and the offense is going to make up for itself. Josh Gibson, I'm going to knock this card. Honestly, statistically, he is better than Mauer, but I think for me, Mauer's the best. Gibson, I used him a good amount, a somewhat large sample size, other than the fact he blows your eardrums out every time you make halfway decent contact with the ball. He just doesn't have a power stroke, which is crazy. I batted multiple balls in the online play with this guy and never saw an exit velo higher than 100 miles an hour. I don't know what it is about him. I don't know if it's the fact that I don't think he has any quirks, which is the case. He has no quirks. I don't know. It's inexplicable, honestly. It's not a skill issue because I put good wood on the ball, but I don't know. Maybe I just got a bad sample with him. But for me personally, I'd rather have Gary over him. I'd definitely rather have Joe Mauer. Justin Turner can play second base for you. I think at third, the argument for running this card is the swing. A lot of people really enjoy his swing, especially If you were somebody that used that Team Affinity one at the start of the year, that was statted very well for like an 89. Then that would kind of be the argument for using this Turner. He can give you decent value at second base. It's not ideal because he is really slow and not the best fielder, but overall the swing's very good. Matt Holliday, contact hitting first baseman. If you want a contact first baseman, not named Joey Votto, this is your guy. 118, 125, 102, 104. Clutch is in a decent enough spot, and then the fielding and speed. The speed's relatively good. Quirk-wise, first pitch, dead red, breaking ball. All he's really missing that I would care about is unfazed right there, but that one's not a huge quirk either. So I think he's decent as a contact first baseman. Maybe you could move him up, but again, not really the archetype of first baseman I look for. Devers kind of blends in with like Berger. They're very similar cards. I'd rather have Berger just because he's a righty. I think his swing's better. A lot of people really, really enjoy Devers every single year. But for me personally, I'd take Berger over him. And then at first base, he's also relatively similar to like Adam Dunn, Jim Thome, people like that. Rap Dixon, this is a card where I'm gonna put him in this F tier, and we're gonna change it to just unknown, because I have no idea. I haven't used a Rap Dixon card all year. I don't know what his swing looks like, but I will just shout out that just off a statistical basis, and the fact that he's kind of like a DeEgo, where he can play a ton of positions. You can see very similar to like Hank Thompson or DeEgo, where he plays every position. Statistically, very good. The power right's kind of the biggest issue with the card, but other than that, he's easily like an A tier card. And maybe even if you play him at second base, he might even be an S tier card. It just kind of depends on what his swing looks like, and I can't really give you too much info on that. Rich Arulia, A tier shortstop, very similar to like Jeter and Holiday. First pitch, dead red, so not all the quirks you love to have, but max out clutch, way better power than like Jeter, slightly better than like Holiday. The clutch is negligible. Like if you put some parallels on him, you're not gonna notice that difference between like him and Jeter. The fielding is actually relatively good, and he's not dirt slow. So he's probably the worst fielder out of those three, but he's also the best hitter out of those three. And when you add that to the fact that a lot of people use that collection reward, Rich Arulia, the stepping stone, I think he was like a 93. If you enjoyed that card, Rich Arulia easily could be your first choice for shortstop. And I would not argue with you. It just kind of depends on how much you like that swing. Rod Carew, worth mentioning. I'll probably put him like B tier just because he plays second, so you kind of can somewhat give him a pass on the power numbers. But also with the way the game plays this year, Rod Carew always has a really glitchy, really good swing, max contact, very high vision, going to give you very big timing windows there. And if you're hitting perfect perfects, you'll still hit home runs with this card. If you're not hitting perfect perfects, probably doesn't justify using this card. Braun looks very good at third base, very similar to like a Justin Turner at third base. I think I personally like Justin Turner's swing a little bit more, but this Braun projects to be a very good third baseman if you want to run him there. You can also run him at first base, but then all this fielding and speed would kind of be a waste almost. Ryan Sandberg, statistically one of the better second basemen. The problem with him is kind of the swing. I don't love the swing, so I think I'm actually gonna knock him. Because he's better than Rod Carew. But the swing's just not great. He kind of has like a closed off, like scissor stance almost. And it feels like he gets jammed a lot, and he just kind of throws the bat over his shoulder. So it's a weird swing. It's not my favorite swing in the world, but it's definitely usable when you look at him statistically. Statistically, he profiles to be one of the better second basemen in the game. Tim Raines, he basically has the Rod Carew argument where you'd run him at second base, he'd be a plus defender there. But Tim Raines has the added benefit of also having that really high contact and that really high vision, but he's also a switch hitter. So I think he's just better than Carew. But they are two very similar cards that kind of fill the same niche. Todd Helton, kind of the ultimate contact first baseman, very similar to like Votto or who else? Matt Holliday, very similar to like those cards. Where probably not my favorite card in the world. his swing has grown on me after doing all of his moments and leveling him up and, you know, working your way to the 99. His swing's very nice. I do really enjoy his swing, but 90 power left's kind of a red flag for me when you can go out and get a guy like Babe Ruth, Joey Votto there, guys that don't really have that huge hole in their game the way that Todd Helton does. Tony Clark, one tier higher than like Santander. He's kind of the Santander upgrade where still a switch hitter. Maybe the swing's not necessarily as good as like Santander's, but the contacts are much improved. The power is more or less the same. The clutch is a little improved. Nah, I think it's worse actually. And the fielding. So they're kind of similar. Tony Clark statistically probably edges out Santander a little bit, but they both have an argument. Really, this Santander at first base probably is a 99 overall. The thing is, he's just a right fielder, so that's kind of the overall on the card. Right field weighs defense a lot more. Lozana, I think he's up there with Lindor. If you don't want to switch hitting second baseman, which I don't know why you wouldn't, I think he is probably your best pick. But I don't know, because also you can run like Jackson Holiday at second base. So for that reason, I think he's very similar to like Holiday. I believe he's a righty. No, he is a lefty. So he's even more similar to Jackson Holiday in that regard, where if you want to run Bazana, if you want to run Holiday, if you want to run Jose Ramirez at second base, if you want to run Justin Turner at second base, we're kicking Sandberg out of this tier, I'll be honest. If you want to run any of those guys at second base, I can't blame you. I think Lindor is better than all of them, but I can't blame you. Trey Turner, he's here for the swing. Honestly, he's here for the swing. His power numbers are way behind at this point. He's like Jeter, but plays slightly worse defense, is a little bit faster, and definitely has a better swing, but the power is even worse. I think Jeter has 92, 82, so keep that in mind. The vision's also not insanely great. He also isn't really quirked up. So he's decent. He's an option. If you're balling on a budget, maybe he's a guy for you, but overall, his times kind of came and went. Fitzgerald, I can't put too much higher. Statistically, he's pretty nasty as a first base or a shortstop. And I believe he also has a lot of other secondary positions. Yeah, so first, second, third, and every outfield spot. But his swing, it's a swing for me. When I was doing just PXP grinding with this card offline, I noticed the swing was not for me. I think that's going to be a lot of people's experience with this card. He's going crazy in real life, not so much in the game. Vladdy Jr., very similar to Frank Thomas. If you want to argue that Vlad's better than Frank, I would not put it past you. I might even agree with you, just because I think his swing's less volatile. I think more people are going to get along better with this Vlad Jr. swing than a guy like Frank. Frank, you have to collect every card for the season, and Vlad, you can go buy on the market for like 50K. So I won't argue with you. Vlad is very, very good. This will probably be his best card all year, unless he gets like a finest card at the end of the year, which he probably will, because the Blue Jays are kind of poverty right now. So I don't know who else would necessarily get one for them. Willie McCovey, this card's whatever. I think he's very similar to Tomei, but the power against lefties is worse. So for that reason, I think I'll actually knock him. I think it was McCovey. It could have been the Pirates outfielder. I forget his name. They got one at Easter. I always get them mixed up. But one of them got an Easter card. If you enjoyed that card, you'll probably enjoy this card. And that's all I'm going to say on it. And then Yasmani goes in the C tier with Santander. Very similar argument. No, he goes D, actually. Kind of that same similar argument where if you're on All-Star, this is all you need for catcher. He might be the best catcher in the game on All-Star, excluding wild cards. But then when you get to Hall of Fame, the problem with Yaz is the contacts aren't great. They're serviceable, but the clutch, his clutch is absolutely brutal on this card, where I wouldn't even run him on Hall of Fame, much less Legend. You can completely forget about Legend. Even if you do like the Santana team, they made that to where that doesn't give clutch anymore. There's like no reason why I would run this card unless I was on All-Star and just wanted to be a degenerate and have a switch hitting catcher. But yeah, guys, that is the infield tier list. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody egregious. There was a lot of guys like Brooks Robinson where I'm like, no, they're not making the list. But overall, I think that I'm pretty comfortable with that. Maybe Joey Votto should go down. Maybe Adrian Beltre should go up. But overall, I feel pretty confident with that. I think that's arguably the best DH. Obviously, I'm ranking Babe more as like a first baseman, but best DH, best first baseman, best third baseman, the best shortstop, the best second baseman, the best catcher. Yeah, so we got all our infield positions there, and then one extra for you. So take your pick of the list. Link will be in the description if you don't watch the entire video again. Till next time, peace.